You won't believe what my daughter Emily decided to do with our donkey Charlie, and we caught the whole thing on camera. It all started on an ordinary Saturday morning. You know, one of those days where everything feels normal until suddenly life throws a curveball your way. And trust me, this one hit us out of nowhere. Emily has always had an endless supply of energy and, to put it mildly, some pretty wild ideas. She's especially obsessed with animals, and our donkey Charlie has been a part of the family for years. He's this gentle giant with a playful side, and I can't count the number of times he's made us laugh with his antics. But what Emily had in mind for him on that particular morning was something I never could have predicted. She burst into the house, her face glowing with excitement. "Mom, I've got a brilliant idea," she announced. As a parent, when you hear those words, you immediately prepare for something completely off the wall. Emily grabbed her camera, eyes sparkling with the promise of a great adventure. "Trust me," she said. "This is going to be amazing." Trust her? After years of surviving her wild schemes? I wasn't so sure. Still, her energy was contagious, and before I knew it, I was standing in the backyard, watching her set up with Charlie, happily munching away on some hay, blissfully unaware of the chaos he was about to be part of. Emily had gathered a bunch of props, and she started explaining her plan. It involved Charlie, a makeshift costume, and a whole lot of enthusiasm. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or be worried. Emily swore it was harmless, and Charlie would love it. But honestly, I had a feeling this could go either way. It would either be the funniest thing we'd ever done, or it would be a disaster we'd laugh about for years. She adjusted the camera and gave Charlie a pep talk, as though he could understand every word. "This is your moment, Charlie," she said, grinning. He blinked slowly, chewing his hay, as if to say, "What could possibly go wrong?" The camera started rolling, and at first, everything seemed to be going according to plan. Emily's idea, which I thought might end in disaster, actually started to look somewhat impressive. But just as I thought we might get through this unscathed, Charlie's mischievous streak kicked in. Out of nowhere, he shook his head, sending a ribbon flying through the air. Then, in true Charlie fashion, he grabbed the edge of a blanket with his teeth and yanked it away from Emily. Her face went pale as she tried to keep her composure on camera. "Charlie, no," she whispered, but he wasn't listening. He tossed the blanket into the air like it was a toy, then kicked up his heels, prancing around the backyard like he was auditioning for a circus. Emily scrambled after him, but the more she chased, the more Charlie seemed to enjoy it. The backyard was now an obstacle course of flying ribbons and loose props. I could barely contain my laughter from behind the camera, watching my daughter in a mix of frustration and giggles. She was trying to salvage the moment, but it was clear that Charlie was in his element. Then things took a turn for the worse. Charlie, with a complete lack of regard for the situation, trotted straight toward the garden where I had just planted some flowers the week before. Emily froze. "Charlie, no, not the flowers," she shouted. Too late. With a few powerful hooves, Charlie was trampling the garden, and dirt flew everywhere. Emily darted after him, still determined to bring him under control. The camera, of course, was still rolling, capturing every chaotic second. We watched in disbelief as Charlie ran circles around the yard, knocking over props and even tangling himself in the ribbons. At one point, he even grabbed the camera tripod with his teeth, pulling it over. The camera teetered dangerously before crashing to the grass. "Mom, is it broken?" Emily's voice was frantic as she rushed to the camera. Luckily, it was still intact, though covered in dirt. But before we could take a breath, Charlie was back on the move, this time heading straight for a pile of ribbons Emily had set aside. He grabbed a handful of them and started scattering them across the yard like confetti. The chaos was reaching new heights, and I couldn't help but laugh. Emily, however, was on the verge of a meltdown as she sprinted after him, calling for him to stop. But Charlie wasn't interested in stopping. He started bucking and running toward the fence at the far end of the yard. The gate, which we usually kept locked, had somehow been left slightly ajar, and before we knew it, Charlie pushed it open and bolted. "Mom, he's loose!" Emily shrieked. I could hear the panic in her voice as we both took off after him. Charlie trotted down the dirt path, leading toward the neighboring fields. The blanket still flapped on his back like a superhero cape. I pulled out my phone, thinking we might need some backup. The neighbors' chickens were out, scratching around in the field, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. Charlie, clearly loving the chaos, let out a loud bray, and the chickens scattered in every direction. Emily shouted at him to stop, but it was too late. He was on a mission. The chickens were in full panic mode, and Charlie just kept going. "Charlie, no," Emily shouted, but he was already headed toward a small pond at the edge of the field. "What if he gets stuck?" Emily asked, concern creeping into her voice. I could tell she was starting to worry, but she wasn't giving up. She crouched down and held out some grass, trying to coax him back. At first, it looked like Charlie might finally cooperate, but just as she was about to grab the blanket off his back, he stepped into the pond, sending water splashing everywhere. "Are you serious right now?" Emily muttered under her breath. She managed to inch closer, but Charlie, ever the trickster, just kept backing up into the deeper part of the pond, daring her to follow him. Finally, Emily, drenched and covered in mud, reached out to grab the blanket. In one last twist, Charlie gave the blanket a shake, sending a spray of water and mud all over her. She splashed down into the mud with a loud splat. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing at the sight of her, completely soaked and staring at Charlie with an expression that could only be described as disbelief. Charlie, ever the showman, seemed completely unfazed. He sniffed the grass Emily was holding out, and for a brief moment, it looked like he might be ready to come home. After some careful coaxing, Emily led him back toward the yard. As we walked back, both of us covered in mud and laughing, I realized just how wild the day had been. And just as I thought the madness had finally come to an end, I remembered the camera had been rolling the whole time. Emily turned to Charlie, giving him a playful nudge. "You better go viral for this," she said with a grin. I had a feeling she was right. The next morning, we uploaded the video with the title, "What Happened When My Daughter Tried This with Our Donkey on Camera." It wasn't just a hilarious disaster. It was a moment that captured the true spirit of family, chaos, and the unexpected joy of life's messiest adventures. By the time we woke up, the video was blowing up. People were commenting, sharing their own funny animal stories, and laughing with us. It wasn't just about Charlie's crazy antics. It was about the joy of finding humor in the chaos and embracing the unpredictable moments that make life so special. As for Charlie, he was back to lounging in the sun, blissfully unaware that he'd become a viral sensation. But Emily, well, she was already brainstorming her next brilliant idea, and I had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time Charlie found himself in the middle of one of her wild adventures.